Hey there, everybody. Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen leading the movement for movement here and moving. Speaking of moving, I'm moving around my picture in picture here to try to figure out where the best spot happens to be. There we go, down to the right, looking pretty good, I think. Okay, well, I'll move it right there. That's professional. Anyway, welcome to another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training. In continuing with this event or series of events that we have here, the coaching brain and of course the coaching eye, because it's not just about the exercise, it's not just about the athlete's level of motivation, it's not just about the athlete's understanding of the exercise, their understanding of the situation, not just about their kinesthetic awareness, not just about their communication, but it is about all of these things combined. And that gets us to the PAC profile. That is the standard operating system of autism fitness: physical, adaptive, and cognitive. And the reason that I decided to do this series is to take many of the concepts and strategies that I have covered in previous editions of Tuesday training and that are much further covered and developed and taught to you in the Autism Fitness Certification Program and bring them to a little bit more three-dimensional life, as much three-dimensional life as can be shown on a screen. So when I talk about any of these strategies, whether we're talking about positive behavior support, any of the cues, any of these exercises, the difference is talking about them in a compartmentalized fashion versus looking at it what it really looks and sounds like when we are working with one of our autism or neurodivergent athletes. So in this edition, we are going to be looking at together my athlete Zeke here doing some overhead presses with this pair of hyperwear soft bells. Now, one thing that I will say before even getting into any of the particulars of the overhead press or what's going on from an adaptive or cognitive perspective is it took Zeke a few sessions to become comfortable with these soft bells, which are a soft version of a dumbbell. They are a fantastic tool for adding to your programming. Now, of course, it is a tool, so we need to know how to utilize it, because every once in a while I'll get a communication from somebody that's really excited about a piece of equipment, but I'm not sure if they know how to properly use it. And knowing how to properly use it is going to make that equipment that much better, that much more effective. Anyway, I digress. It took a few sessions for Zeke to really become comfortable with these soft bells because he had been overhead pressing with a pair of 8-pound sandbells, which you see us use frequently in our autism fitness programs. And so even just gripping a new object, not that it was aversive, he didn't have an existential crisis about it, it was just the positioning. And when we talk about kinesthetic awareness, that body awareness, where do I hold this thing? Because I was holding the last thing, i.e. the sandbell, a different way, right? So just starting out here, know that this is a newer way for Zeke to do this overhead press. So what I want you to look out for, I'm going to make this call preemptively, is I want you to look at his form on the overhead press. I want you to look at what's going on for him, anything that's observable. So we're not going to start making wildly inaccurate guesses about his internal state, but what is objectively true here? What's going on when he does the overhead press? Right. So I gave him the verbal cue to press, and right there, that looks good. But you see, it took him a second, and this is something that I have spoken about in previous videos. Also, the latency for an athlete to begin the set and the importance that is upon us as coaches, as instructors, as the deliverers of fitness programming, how important it is to just take an extra second or take an extra 2 seconds or take an extra 3 seconds to allow the athlete the space to start or initiate the exercise. It can be crucial, and it can be the difference between that athlete getting upset or anxious and there being a good amount of flow and levity in the session. So that's thing number one. And we're 3 seconds in. So there's a press. Really good control. Okay, let's talk about the physical. I'm going to bring it back a little bit, and we're just looking at 2 repetitions here. But that is an achievement right there, particularly for an athlete of this particular profile. Pressing overhead with control, lowering with control. We want to get that up to maybe 2.5, 3 seconds. But this is why it's so important, right? I'll stop them right here. Here's why this is critical. The training effect of the exercise necessitates, requires that the movement, particularly when we're talking about our strength-based exercises, not so much with medicine ball throws or sandbell slams, although they need to be controlled, but there's a lot more velocity there because it's a power-based movement. With the press or a squat or a row, if there is not sufficient control through the concentric, through the eccentric, you have a much less effective exercise. So if the athlete is speeding through the movement and you are standing next to them, clapping and celebrating how awesome it is, you're doing the athlete a disservice because that will most likely require you stepping in. I've said require a couple of times already, but it requires a modification of the exercise because the athlete is not yet able to perform that exercise with independent mastery. If they are not yet able to perform that exercise with independent mastery, meaning a controlled concentric, the press, a controlled eccentric, the lowering, then they are not getting everything out of the exercise that they can and should be getting out of the exercise. So here, okay, we're going to point out, and he starts again, but right here in that gap, we have another latency. And this is where myself or you as a coach or anybody in our autism fitness curriculum need to make a decision. And the decision is this. Do I provide some type of verbal or physical, not so much physical, but mirror prompt, a visual prompt, if you will? Or do I keep my mouth shut and allow the athlete to self-regulate and get himself back on track? And all too often, there's a tendency to overcoach here and give the athlete information or a verbal prompt that they do not need. That is just extra noise. One of the things that we want to establish and build for our athletes is self-efficacy. And that word shows up real fancy like on a screen or in an article or when we're highlighting the benefits of whatever program. But in reality, where I want to see self-efficacy are 2 places for this type of athlete. right? This type of profile. Number one, in initiating an exercise, like starting to do it themselves. And two, if they get dysregulated, coming back and either starting again or picking up where they last left off. Those are the two measures of self efficacy that I want to see during a session. And if I continue to verbally prompt and cue that athlete to do the exercise over and over and over, especially in these spaces where there might be a little delay, I'm denying them the opportunity to self regulate and start performing the exercise again. So there was that little pause. We'll come back to it. And then he starts again. And what I'm doing, and this is another fundamental tenet of autism fitness programming, what I'm doing is providing behavior specific praise. A big deal, a big concept, a major strategy in our autism fitness programming. I am enabling Zeke to know exactly what he's doing correctly when he is doing it. So instead of just great job, great job, great job, those are probably, they're not terrible words, but there are two of my least favorite to hear when in coaching situations. Great job, great. It's so generic and it's not as effective. Again, we talk a lot about effective versus ineffective. It's not as effective as great job getting those arms up because we're pointing out exactly what the athlete is doing correctly here. All right, so I'll start this over again one more time. So we have three aspects of any athlete performance as soon as the session starts. We have the physical. What is the athlete capable of doing independently as far as this exercise goes? So this is not a case of are they high functioning? Are they low functioning? It's what can they do? In this case, what can Zeke do? Zeke can independently press these, I think those are 9 pounds each, 9-pound soft bells overhead for, in this set, it happened to be 8 reps with minimal verbal prompting. All right. Physically, that's what he can do, which is fantastic because he's doing it at a level where there is going to be a training effect. It is going to get his shoulders, his upper back, little bit of tricep, and his grip stronger. And these are generalizable physical attributes that can be used in a variety of different activities of daily living throughout the course of his day. This is a good thing. This is our goal with general fitness programming, particularly for the autism and neurodivergent population. All right? So we're doing good here. From an adaptive perspective, as we watch this go along, and I'm just going to play this out, from an adaptive perspective, Zeke is sufficiently motivated and engaged with the exercise for most of the set that there is going to be the opportunity for a training effect. If the latency here were 10 or 12 or 20 seconds, as can be the case with some athletes, between repetitions, we would not have the same level of training effect because human physiology is human physiology regardless of whether you have an individual with autism or a different developmental situation. or a neurotypical human being. The physiology is going to be the physiology. Anybody who argues different, well, that's an interesting debate. So if we can agree that we're dealing with human bodies, then we can attest to how effective a set is going to be based on the physical performance, similar to anybody else doing the exercise. So from an adaptive perspective, he is sufficiently motivated to perform the entire set without putting the soft bells down or getting so distracted. And this can be an internal thing also. It may not be an escape maintain behavior that takes the athlete away from performing the set to best current physical ability. And then from a cognitive standpoint, now cognitive, we break into neurological and neuromuscular. Does he understand first the expectation of the exercise? Clearly, that is a yes right here. Arms go up controlled, arms come down controlled, do another rep. I think it's safe to say he understands the expectation here. From a neuromuscular perspective, the same. He is able to raise his arms up all the way overhead. The movement is not too fast or too jerky. His arms are not going way out and going and veering off course from overhead, which has definitely been known to happen. So overall, he has understanding and control over this movement pattern, which is great. So if we're checking off the boxes, physically, he's able to do this overhead press independently. From an adaptive perspective, he's sufficiently motivated and focused. Awesome. Not always the case. And cognitively understands the language. So here, grab the soft bells, overhead presses. He knows what to do with them. And from a kinesthetic body awareness standpoint, he's able to execute repetition after repetition that is similar and high quality enough with technique that he's independent with it. So if you are currently working in a fitness or movement capacity with your athletes, and you can, meaning you have permission to take video, highly recommend it because you will see things and then you can analyze what is actually going on, which in the session is quite important, but after the session is also something that is very helpful, particularly if you have athletes who get dysregulated easily. And by the time the session is over, you're like, what just happened? Well, you can go back to the video and check it out. So in this series, again, I hope this has been helpful for you. This is the way that we assess our athletes' autism fitness style through the PAC profile, which rhymed and I didn't even mean it to. So that was organic. And we're after high quality movement developed over time with the proper support of the athlete and appropriate communication so they understand the expectation. That's the formula, right? If this has been helpful for you, please put that in the comments below. If there is a topic you'd like me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, put that in the comments below also. And if you are ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, head on over to autismfitness.com, learn more about the course. You can even contact me directly to ask any questions that you have. I'm Eric Chessen, founder of Autism Fitness, leading the movement for movement. Thank you for watching another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, and I will see you next time I do this.